I was the one who marinated the ribs he fed to her when he got down on one knee. I heard the clinking of the wine glasses before I turned around. His voice rang out like a gunshot across the backyard, cutting through the laughter. "Babe, will you marry me?" I froze with the tray of corn in my hands. My body forgot how to breathe. My knees locked. And then the worst part. My sister gasped and said yes. Everyone clapped. My mother cried. Someone started filming, and I just stood there, holding food for the woman he said was too messy to ever be a wife. The exact words he'd used on me 6 months ago. The exact words that gutted me like a fish. He told me I was too emotional, that I didn't know how to keep things tidy, that I always made things about me. But now, here he was, on one knee, smiling like a movie star, proposing to my sister in the same backyard where we used to sneak kisses behind the tool shed. No one looked at me. Not one person noticed I was trembling. My hands were shaking so hard the tongs slipped and hit the ground. Still, I said nothing. I turned around, walked back to the kitchen, and hid in the pantry for 12 full minutes until I could swallow my scream. I remember the smell of garlic and butter suffocating me. I remember the sound of her giggling outside. I remember thinking, is this some kind of sick joke? Like I was the setup in a long, humiliating prank show, and they'd reveal the cameras any second. But no, it was real. His hand on her waist was real. Her ring, my grandmother's ring, was real. My mother giving a toast saying, "Finally someone good enough for my daughter," was real. I wasn't dreaming. I was being erased in high definition daylight. And the worst part? No one even remembered we used to date. Or maybe they did. Maybe they just pretended to forget because it was easier than admitting how cruel this was. Easier than looking me in the eye while I got replaced in front of the potato salad. I had prepped that whole barbecue. I sent the invites. I cleaned the grill. I made her damn sangria. And all of it led to that moment. That image of her being lifted into his arms while I stood there like a waitress who'd stayed too long at the party. You know what burns? It's not the betrayal. It's the silence. It's how everyone acts like you should just smile through it. Keep the peace. Don't cause a scene. As if being quiet makes you noble, not invisible. He told me I was never going to be wife material. That I wasn't stable enough. That I cared too much about things that didn't matter. And now he was proposing to the girl who can't even cook rice without burning it. Tell me again how that makes sense. My sister knew. She knew everything. She knew the way he'd touched my arm that night on the porch. How I cried after he left. How I spent weeks replaying every argument in my head. She knew, and she said yes anyway. I didn't just lose a boyfriend. I lost my sister. I lost my mother's respect. I lost every memory I'd ever had in that backyard. Every Sunday lunch. Every Christmas bonfire. All of it now stained with the image of them clapping as if I didn't exist. I wish I could say. I screamed, threw the tray, slapped someone, but I didn't. I did what every woman is taught to do. I swallowed it. I swallowed the pain, the rage, the humiliation. I became invisible, and I smiled when I walked back out. I smiled while my chest burned like hell, because if they were going to turn me into the villain, I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of watching me break. That day wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the moment I realized I'd been edited out of my own life, just like that. I used to think my family was close. Not perfect, no one's is, but close enough to believe in Sunday dinners and inside jokes. I was the eldest daughter, the dependable one, the one who planned birthdays, who remembered everyone's allergies, who cleaned up after my mom's tears and my sister's mistakes. I thought that meant something. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the second mom, my aunts would say. While my sister, Clara, got away with skipping school, sneaking out, and flunking math, I was the one who made flashcards for her. I thought I was building trust. Turns out, I was just being groomed to carry the weight while she danced freely through life. My mom always had a soft spot for her. "She's just more sensitive," she'd whisper, every time Clara broke something or stormed out mid-argument. But when I cried, I was told I was dramatic. When I got overwhelmed, I was too much. I learned early how to repress, how to fold my pain into quiet corners of my body. Then came Evan. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, but he had this quiet charm that made you feel seen. At least that's what I thought. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party. He laughed at my jokes, listened when I spoke. For the first time in a long time, I felt chosen. We dated for almost a year. It wasn't perfect. No relationship is, but there were good moments. Nights cooking together, road trips with playlists, long walks where we talked about futures and fears. I thought we were building something. I thought I mattered. He met my family after 6 months. My mom liked him, maybe a little too much. Clara, she was weird around him from the start. Flirty, but in that joking way she always had. "He's cute," she once said, right in front of me, giggling like it was harmless. I laughed, but something twisted in my stomach. Still, I brushed it off, because that's what I always did. I gave the benefit of the doubt. I trusted people's intentions, even when they were blurry, even when my gut whispered otherwise. Things started to shift after that first family vacation. Evan pulled back. He got colder, less patient. He'd make comments about how Clara got me better than I got myself, that she was more spontaneous, more fun. I thought he was joking, until he wasn't. We had one last fight before the breakup. I asked him if he still loved me. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "I just don't think you're wife material." No emotion, no hesitation, like he'd rehearsed it, like he believed it. I didn't tell anyone, not even Clara. I was ashamed. I thought I'd done something wrong, that if I'd just been more chill, less emotional, more easygoing like her, maybe he would have stayed, maybe he would have picked me. So I buried it. I went back to family dinners. I sat across from him while he laughed with Clara. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that there was no way they'd ever, but deep down, I think I knew. My mom never asked why we broke up. She just said, "Some women just aren't meant for marriage, and that's okay." I nodded. I smiled, but I felt the crack begin right then. A hairline fracture in my chest that would split wide open months later, because love doesn't always leave with a bang. Sometimes it walks out quietly, slips into someone else's arms, and pretends it was never yours to begin with. It started small. That's how betrayal always does. Tiny shifts in energy, half smiles that don't reach the eyes, inside jokes you're not part of. One night at dinner, Clara laughed at something Evan said and looked at me like I wasn't. Even there, I told myself I was imagining it. Then she started showing up at events he was invited to. "I didn't know he'd be there," she'd say, twirling her hair, pretending to be surprised. But she always wore lipstick when he was around, always leaned in too close when talking to him. My gut twisted every time. At my birthday brunch, she brought him a gift, for me, a book he used to read aloud to me. She said, "Evan thought you'd love this again," like I was some child they were co-parenting. My fingers clenched so hard, I left little crescent moons in my palm. I caught them texting once. His phone lit up with her name while he was showing me something on Instagram. He flinched, locked the screen too fast. I asked what it was. He said, "Nothing important." My throat went dry, but I said nothing. When I told my mom I felt weird about how close Clara and Evan had gotten, she rolled her eyes. "You're jealous," she said. "You always compete with your sister. It's exhausting." That word, exhausting. Like I was a burden for feeling hurt. Clara started calling me uptight, said I was too serious and needed to loosen up. "Maybe that's why you two didn't work out," she joked once, wine drunk at family dinner. Evan laughed. I excused myself to cry in the bathroom. They started showing up to family things together. "Just friends," she said. "We're both single. What's the big deal?" The big deal was that I wasn't allowed to feel anything about it. I had to sit there, smile, and swallow the humiliation. My mom invited him to game night without asking me. Clara said it'd be fun. She shrugged. I said I didn't want to come. She called me selfish, said I was ruining the family vibe, as if my discomfort was the problem, not the knife they kept twisting in my back. At Easter, they sat next to each other. He served her dessert. She laughed at all his jokes. I kept my eyes on the floor, biting the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. No one noticed. Or worse, they noticed and didn't care. I started fading out, skipping events, saying I was busy. But then my mom called me dramatic, said I was punishing everyone for something that was in my head. Gaslighting doesn't always scream. Sometimes it sighs and says you're imagining things. Evan messaged me once, late at night, "Hope you're okay." That's it. No apology, no explanation. Just that vague, cowardly check-in that men send when they want to feel better about the damage they caused. I didn't respond. Clara began dropping comments like breadcrumbs. "Some people just aren't meant to be wives. Not everyone has the nurturing thing. You've always been more like intense." She never said my name, but I knew who she meant. The last time I saw them before the barbecue, she winked at me while touching his arm, like she was daring me to say something. Like this was a game she was winning, and I was the fool still reading rules no one else followed. That's when I knew something was coming. I didn't know what, but I felt the walls closing in, the silence growing louder, the stage being set for a scene I didn't audition for, but would be forced to watch. The day of the barbecue, I woke up early. I was the first one in the kitchen, chopping onions, marinating ribs, setting the playlist. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted, for once, to feel like I still belonged in a family that had been slipping through my fingers. Clara came late, of course. Hair done, nails fresh, dressed 2 sizes too small for a casual backyard party. She gave me a lazy smile and said, "Smells amazing in here, sis." I nodded, too tired to fight her fake sweetness, too numb to play along. Evan arrived 15 minutes later, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite. He handed them to Clara. My throat burned. My fingers tightened around the spatula. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and just looked away. My mom called out, "Let's eat!" The table was full. Cousins, uncles, neighbors. Laughter echoed across the lawn. I was plating corn when I saw Evan whisper something to Clara. She giggled, brushing his shoulder. My stomach dropped like a stone in water. Then it happened. Just as I stepped out with the last tray, I heard my name. No, not my name. My sister's name. Clara. Everyone turned. Evan was on one knee, in our backyard. The one he used to say felt like home because of me. She gasped. covered her mouth like she didn't know. She knew. Her eyes flicked to me for half a second, not out of guilt, but victory. A cold, gleaming victory. "Yes," she squealed, throwing her arms around him. The ring sparkled like a slap. Everyone cheered. My mother actually cried. "Finally," she said. "Someone who gets her." I stood frozen, tray in hand. No one looked at me. No one checked my face. I was background noise. In my own life, I turned around before the tears could fall, walked back inside, found the pantry, and shut the door. I slid down to the floor and covered my mouth with both hands. My body shook with silent sobs. I couldn't breathe. My chest screamed, but I stayed quiet. I heard them call my name, not out of concern, out of habit. "Where's the corn?" Someone laughed. I wiped my face, stood up, and looked in the mirror on the pantry door. I didn't recognize myself. I looked hollow, used, replaced. When I stepped back out, they were posing for photos. My sister holding up her hand like a trophy. My mom beside her, beaming. Evan's arm draped around Clara like she'd always been the one, like I had imagined the whole thing. Someone handed me a glass of wine. I nodded, smiled, sipped. My face burned. My insides were ash, but I smiled. Because what else do you do when the man who said you were too much gives everything you wanted to someone who never had to ask? I wanted to scream, throw the wine, shake my mother, ask Clara if she ever loved me. But I didn't, because deep down, I already knew the answers. And they hurt more than any confrontation ever could. I stayed another hour. I served the cake. I hugged relatives. I congratulated them both. I kissed Clara on the cheek. She looked at me like she'd won something. Maybe she had. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that something inside me had just snapped. Not in a rage, not in vengeance, in clarity. This was the moment I knew. I was done being the one who stayed quiet while others stole. I was done setting the table for people who would never save me a seat. I didn't show up to the engagement dinner my mom planned 2 weeks later. She called me 5 times. I let it ring. She texted, "You're being petty." I deleted it without reading the rest. For the first time in my life, I chose not to explain myself. I didn't fight. I didn't confront. I disappeared, quietly. I stopped answering family group chats. I muted their stories. I left every event invite on scene. They noticed, but only after my silence grew louder than any scream ever could. Clara tried calling once, just once. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice light like nothing had happened. I almost laughed. I imagined myself saying everything I wanted to say, but instead, I said, "No, we can't," and I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. I didn't go to the bridal shower. I didn't buy a gift. I didn't comment on the pictures they posted, posing with wine glasses and pastel balloons. My mom tagged me in one. I removed the tag. My presence was no longer a courtesy I was willing to offer. People asked about me. A cousin texted, "Are you okay?" I didn't reply, because the truth is, I wasn't, and I was tired of pretending. Otherwise for people who watched me bleed and called it drama. My mother left a voicemail. "I raised you better than this," she said. "You're punishing your sister for falling in love." Falling in love? With a man who left me wrecked and confused? I guess betrayal is easy to justify when it's wrapped in romance. Evan never reached out again. Not a word, not a message. I guess silence is easier than accountability. He got what he wanted. A version of me who didn't fight back, didn't expose him, didn't shatter the image he carefully curated. I started going on long walks, alone, no music, just the sound of my own breathing. I deleted our photos from my phone, archived the texts, not out of bitterness, out of necessity. Healing requires space, and I was finally giving myself some. There was a strange kind of peace in the withdrawal. No more pretending, no more performing the role of the strong one. I didn't owe them that anymore. I owed myself stillness. I owed myself distance. I stopped explaining my decisions. If they didn't understand why I walked away, that was their burden, not mine. I was done justifying my boundaries to people who never respected them. My therapist said, "You chose yourself," and for the first time in months, I didn't cry when I heard that. I nodded. I smiled. I let that sentence land in the parts of me that still ached. They moved on quickly, planned the wedding, posted countdowns, acted like nothing strange had ever happened. That's the power of collective denial. If enough people ignore the wound, it stops bleeding, at least to them. But I remembered every silence, every smirk, every time they looked past me like I was furniture, and I promised myself, never again. Never again would I let anyone make me feel small in spaces I helped build. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness, it's strategy, it's survival, it's dignity. I moved out of the city 2 months after the proposal, packed everything I owned into a rented U-Haul, and drove 5 hours to a town where no one knew my name. It wasn't dramatic, no big goodbye, just a quiet, deliberate escape. I got a small apartment with creaky floors and too much sunlight. It didn't matter. It was mine. No memories in the walls, no ghosts in the corners, just blank space where I could finally breathe without waiting for the next blow. I got a job at a local bookstore, part-time, minimum wage. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt grounding. I stacked paperbacks and helped old women find poetry collections. And for the first time in a long time, my chest didn't feel like it was caving in. I started therapy again. Real therapy, not the kind where you try to look okay so your therapist doesn't worry. This time I told the truth. About the silence. About the pain. About how I'd spent my whole life being useful so people wouldn't leave me. I cried in nearly every session, but it was the good kind of crying. The kind that rinses out your insides, leaves you lighter. My therapist asked me, "What would you say if your best friend had gone through this?" I said, "I'd tell her she deserved better." She looked at me and said, "So do you." I started writing again, just journaling at first, then short stories, then personal essays. I wrote about betrayal, about family, about being invisible in rooms I helped light. I didn't share them with anyone, but writing them made me feel like I still existed. One day, I saw a flyer at the bookstore for a women's writing group. I went, nervous as hell, but the women were kind. They listened, they nodded, they said, "That happened to me too." And for the first time, I didn't feel like the only one carrying this kind of ache. I began to feel stronger, not in the loud, triumphant way people expect, but in quiet moments, getting out of bed without crying, laughing at my own jokes, saying no without guilt. Strength, I realized, wasn't always fireworks. Sometimes it was just breathing without flinching. I made new friends, women who didn't know my sister's name, who didn't see me as the background character in someone else's love story. They saw me, flawed, healing, trying, and they stayed. No strings, no performance. I started posting my writing online. One post went viral, a short piece about family betrayal. I didn't use names. I didn't need to. Women wrote to me, pouring out their own stories. "I thought I was alone. You put it into words. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." I didn't realize it then, but that was the moment everything changed. My pain had become something more than just mine. It became a bridge, a voice, a mirror, and in that, I found purpose. I wasn't healed yet. Some days I still shook when I saw a photo of them online. Some nights I still woke up crying, but I was healing, day by day, brick by brick. I was rebuilding a life where I was no longer an afterthought. I no longer wanted revenge. I wanted peace, and for the first time, I was willing to choose it, even if it meant closing the door on people who shared my blood, because blood isn't always family, and silence isn't always weakness. It was almost a year later when I saw them again. The wedding had come and gone. I didn't go, didn't send a message, didn't even look at the photos, but I heard through cousins that it was beautiful, that my mother gave a speech, that Clara cried when Evan kissed her. I was home visiting my aunt, the only relative who still reached out without strings. We were grabbing coffee when we ran into them, Evan and Clara, arm in arm, walking out of a boutique like a perfect little postcard. My stomach tensed, but my face didn't flinch. Clara saw me first. She froze. Her eyes widened, lips parted like she wanted to say something. Evan didn't even pretend to look surprised. He just gave that smug, subtle nod, like he expected me to fall apart. I didn't. "Hey," she said, voice small, like we were kids again, like she hadn't stolen the man I loved and turned my mother against me. "You look different." I did. I was different. Not softer, stronger, not louder, clearer. Looked her in the eyes and said, "I know. That's it." No smile, no pleasantries, just truth. She blinked, like she didn't know how to respond. Evan shifted beside her, clearly uncomfortable. I could tell he wasn't used to this version of me. They asked if I wanted to join them for lunch, as if we were just old friends catching up, as if betrayal could be brushed aside with appetizers. I said no, calm, direct, no explanation. Watching her face fall was something I'll never forget. My aunt tried to fill the silence, awkwardly mentioning the wedding. I cut her off gently. "I'm happy where I am." It wasn't about them. It was about me. I wasn't there to perform forgiveness. I wasn't there to make anyone comfortable. Clara asked if we could talk sometime. I told her we already did. Every silence, every dismissal, every moment she looked away while I drowned. That was the conversation, and I had nothing left to say. Evan didn't speak. Not one word. He just stood there, watching me like a stranger who once knew a version of me he could control. But that girl was gone, and he knew it. They left first. She kept glancing back. I didn't. I walked with my head high, spine straight, heart steady. I didn't need closure. I was the closure. My absence in their lives said more than any confrontation ever could. Later that night, I saw that Clara had unblocked me. She even liked one of my writing posts. I didn't block her back. I didn't delete the notification. I just let it sit there, like proof that people always circle back to what they once tried to silence. The next day, my mom called. "Clara told me she ran into you," she said. "She said you were cold." I almost laughed. Cold? No, cold would have been telling the truth. Cold would have been listing every betrayal betrayal and betrayal's price. What I was done. She asked if I'd come for Christmas. I said, not this year. She asked why. I said, because I finally feel safe. And then I hung up. Not angry, not sad, just free. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't need them to apologize. Their absence was the apology. My growth, the revenge. Sometimes the best confrontation is no confrontation at all. I don't think healing looks like what people imagine. It's not fireworks and forgiveness and dramatic reunions with hugs in the rain. It's quiet. It's mundane. It's sipping coffee alone on a porch you pay for yourself, feeling peace in your own skin. Some mornings, I still remember his voice, the way he said I wasn't wife material, like it was a diagnosis, like he was doing me a favor. That voice used to echo in my bones. Now, it's background noise, a bad memory with no power left. Claire and I don't speak. I no longer crave her understanding. I've accepted she was never the sister I needed, just the mirror I kept looking into, hoping to find myself. And that's the thing about reflections. They only show what's on the surface. My mother hasn't changed. She still thinks I'm the difficult one, the dramatic one. That's okay. Let her. I no longer bend myself into silence to earn a love that comes with conditions. I learned that peace isn't found in pleasing people who never saw me. I've built a life from scratch. New friends, new city, new dreams. I'm not over it, but I'm beyond it. And there's something sacred about that. I sleep with both eyes closed now. I trust myself. I know who I am. Sometimes I pass couples in the street and wonder if they're holding each other's hearts gently or squeezing them without even realizing it. I used to think love had to hurt a little. Now I know love should feel like air, not suffocation. I still get messages from women who read my story, strangers who say, that was me. And every time I write back, you're not alone. You never were. Because that's what I needed to hear once. That's what kept me breathing when it felt like no one saw me. The pain didn't kill me. The silence didn't drown me. The betrayal didn't break me. It all became the soil for something stronger, deeper, real. I didn't just survive. I became. And if he sees me now, happy, whole, thriving without him, I hope he finally understands the truth. I was never the problem. I was the proof he couldn't handle something real. I used to beg to be seen. Now I live in the light, he said. I'd never be wife material. And thank God, because I was never meant to fit into a role that small.